Okay, so let's take a look at this question, which is talking about the forces in the experiment. Yeah, so when we have one of the required practicals for forces. So it says, a student investigated how the height of a ramp affects the acceleration of a trolley down the ramp. The diagram below shows some of the equipment used. And you see here, trolley, a ramp, and wooden blocks all labeled. And it says, plan an investigation to determine how the height of the ramp affects the acceleration of the trolley. So we're looking at explaining how we set up and make this experiment. So not interpreting the results, but how we carry out the method and how we get the results. Yeah, so it's all about what the investigation is that we carry out. And this is for 6 marks. So it's one of those, a big question. I've got to put a few points down, but if you highlight what apparatus you're using and how you're using it, showing those steps is quite easy to then get the 6 marks. Okay, so let's take a look here. So I'll underline here the key points we're trying to put across in planning how to see how the height of the ramp affects the acceleration of the trolley. Okay, so we're going to have to adjust the height, yeah, because we're investigating, that's the independent variable, and then we're measuring or seeing how the acceleration is affected as a result of that. So you can see here, there are several wooden blocks piled up under the ramp. So what we're going to do is, that's the thing we're going to vary. So the first point I'm going to say is, place one block under the ramp. So we've placed it under the ramp, and we've now set a particular height, but we need to measure what that height is, yeah, so that we can record it. So I'll say measure the height using a meter rule. So you can say a meter rule or a ruler. Yeah, but something to measure the height. So we're capturing the apparatus there and what we're measuring. Yeah, so measuring the height using a meter rule. So now we've recorded that height. Now we want to place this trolley on the ramp, and we're not trying to apply any force on it ourselves, okay, because we're trying to see how the height affects the acceleration. If we apply a force and push it, that's going to affect the acceleration some more, so we don't want to get involved. So we just place the ramp on the trolley and let go, release the trolley. Okay, so we're going to say place the trolley on the ramp and release it. So to find the acceleration, we're going to have to look at how far it traveled and how quickly it traveled that distance. Okay, so to record the distance, we're going to say measure the distance traveled using a meter rule once again. So I'll put that here, measure the distance the trolley traveled using a meter rule. So now we've recorded the distance. To record the time, we want to go with the most accurate way possible. You can mention a few things. You could mention a stopwatch or a timer, but I'm going to mention the most accurate way, which we've seen in the notes for carrying out this experiment, and that is using light gates. So I'm going to say here, the next point, measure the time taken by using light gates. Okay, so now a care point when carrying out an experiment, we also need to mention those. So one thing here is we've done it, but we would repeat it so that we can get an average in our results. Yeah, so making sure that we don't make any mistakes, rule out any anomalies. I'm just going to put repeat this experiment and calculate an average time. So now we've calculated the time and we've done that at one height. So now we want to vary the height, right? Because again, it says, and I've underlined it already, determine how the height of the ramp affects the acceleration. So now we're going to repeat the experiment but at a different height by adding more blocks. Okay, so we'll put the point here, repeat all steps at different heights by adding wooden blocks. Okay, so the more you add, then you get a greater height, and then you measure all of these things again. Okay, so now we've got all of that. How are we going to calculate the acceleration which they've asked for? So that's the last bit. And now you can say you're going to calculate that acceleration by using one of the 2 equations we've seen in this topic. So I'm going to pick the shorter one. I'm going to say, and I'm just going to put it on in the corner here, calculate acceleration, or A, using the equation A equals V minus U over T. There we have how we're going to get our acceleration. So then we can then use those results to see at each height what was the acceleration, and then we can go on to interpret those results later on. But here they've simply asked us to plan the investigation, as you can see here. So we've done that, and that is what's going to give us our 6 marks.